To another random Wikipedia article. I don't know. The way I say it, I don't even know how to kind of like greet what is the right way or because whenever I say welcome to random Wikipedia article, it sounds kind of odd. It it yeah, I don't it definitely doesn't sound like someone who'll just go to a random Wikipedia article and just start reading. But that's exactly what we're gonna do. So I am gonna just click on this random article and learn about Dutton versus Howell. So, back in 1693, in an early modern English court, notable for establishing the doctrine that English law was established in English plantations in the New Worlds, and the maxim that the laws of England are the birthright of the English. It also established that colonies in unoccupied lands were under English law, and those that were conquered lands retained the laws from prior to conquest, specifically when certain subjects of England, by consent of their prince, go to possess an uninhabited desert country. The common law must be supposed their rule as was twas their birthright. When they went whither, they no more abandoned English law that their allegiance. For example, the judges decide the Barbados was a plantation or new settlement of Englishmen by the king's consent in an uninhabited country, which meant that settlers must abide by the same laws as in force in England. The New World is a term for the majority of Earth's western hemisphere, specifically the Americas. The term gained prominence in the early 16th century during Europe's Age of Discovery, shortly after the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci concluded that America. A saying is any concisely written or spoken expression that is especially memorable because of its meaning or style. Sayings are categorized as follows: aphorism, a general observational truth, like a pithy expression of wisdom or truth. And then adage, proverb, or saw. Terra nullius is a Latin expression meaning nobody's land. It was a principle sometimes used in international law to justify claims that territory must be acquired by a state's occupation of it. Territory may be acquired by a state's occupation of it. English law is the common law legal system of England and Wales, comprising mainly criminal law and civil law, each branch having its own codes and procedures. Barbados is an island country in the Lesser Antilles of the West Indies, in the Caribbean region of the Americas, and the most easterly of the Caribbean islands. It occupies an area of 432 kilometers square or square kilometer, um, which is equivalent to 167 square miles, and has a population of about 287,000 people. Its capital and largest city is Bridgetown. Well, England is a country that is part of the United Kingdom. It shares land borders with Wales to its west and Scotland to its north. The Irish Sea lies northwest of England and the Celtic Sea to the southwest. England is separated from continental Europe by the North Sea to the east and the English Channel to the I would say to the south. Anyways, so I'm kind of curious about the philosophy of sayings. A saying is any concisely written or spoken expression that is especially memorable because of its meaning or style. Sayings are categorized as follows: aphorism, a general observational truth, a pithy expression of wisdom or truth. And within that, there are adage, proverb, or saw, which are a widely known or popular aphorism that has gained credibility by long use of or tradition. Then there is apodism, apodism, apodism. G must be silent there, I bet. Apodem, an edgy, more cynical aphorium, such as men are generally more careful of the breed of their horses and dogs than of their children. And then there are cliche or bromide, which are an unoriginal or overused saying. Okay. Under which there is platitude, which is a cliche that is unsuccessfully presented as though it were meaningful, original, or effective. Huh. An epigram, which is a clever and often poetic written saying that comments on a specific person, idea, or thing. It especially denominates such a saying that is conspicuously put at the beginning of a text. Epitaph is a saying in honor of a dissident, often engraved on a headstone or plaque. Epithet is a descriptive word or saying already widely associated with a specific person, idea, or thing. Idiom, a saying that has only a non literal interpretation, an expression whose meaning can't be derived simply by hearing it, such as kick the bucket. And there are four character idiom. There is Shengyu, which is Chinese four character idioms, and Saja Seong Iyo, which is Korean form of four character idioms, and Yoji Yo Yojijukugo, which is a Japanese form of four character idioms. And then there are mantra, which is a religious, mystical, or other spiritual saying that is repeated, for example, in meditation. And then maxim, which is an instructional expression of a general principle or rule of morality, or simply a synonym for aphorism. They include brocades, gnomes, legal maxims, and then there is motto, which is a saying used frequently by a person or group to summarize its general mission. And within motto, there is slogan, which is a motto which the goal of persuading. And then there is quip, which is a clever or humorous saying based on an observation. And witticism, which is a saying that is clever and usually humorous, and notably for its form or style just as much as or other than its meaning. I love this. These are like different lens to to say things, right? So may not be like different lens, but uh, different tools or different ways to express things. An expression is, in syntax and grammar, a phrase is a group of words which act together as a grammatical unit. For instance, the English expression, the very happy squirrel, is a noun phrase which contains the adjective phrase very happy. Phrases can consist of a single word or a complete sentence. An aphorism is a concise, terse, laconic, or memorable expression of a general truth or principle. They are often handed down by tradition from generation to generation. The concept is generally distinct from those of an adage, brocade, chiasmus, epigram, maxim, principle, proverb, and saying. An adage An adage is a concise, memorable, and usually philosophical aphorism that communicates an important truth derived from experience, custom, or both, and that many people consider true and credible because of its longeval tradition, that is, being handed down generation to generation. A proverb is a simple and insightful traditional saying that expresses a perceived truth based on common sense or experience. Proverbs are often metaphorical and use formulaic language. Collectively, they form a genre of folklore. A saw is an old saying or commonly repeated phrase or idea, a conventional wisdom, while old saw is a common phrase for saw. Some consider it a tautology. A tradition is a belief or behavior passed down within a group or society with symbolic meaning or special significance with origins in the past. A component of folklore. Common examples include holidays or impractical but socially meaningful clothes, but the idea has also been applied to social norms. Okay, look like there's no page for apotheism, which is an edgy, more cynical aphorism. I think that's why there is no page for a cynical aphorism. Aphotem. I think apodem. Apodem. A cliche is a French loanword expressing an element of an artistic work, saying, or idea that has become overused to the point of losing its original meaning or effect, even to the point of being trite or irritating, especially when at some earlier time it was considered meaningful or novel. Bromide in literary usage means a phrase, cliche, or platitude that is trite or unoriginal. It can be intended to soothe or placate. It can suggest insincerity or a lack of originality in the speaker. Bromide can also mean a commonplace or tiresome person. A platitude is a trite, meaningless, or prosaic statement often used as a thought terminating cliche aimed at uh, quelling social, emotional, or cognitive unease. The statement may be true, but its meaning has been lost due to its excessive use. An epigram is a brief, interesting, memorable, and sometimes surprising or satirical statement. The word is derived from the Greek epigramma, encryption, from epigraphein, to write on, to inscribe, which is what. And the literary device has been employed for a long time, I think. Poetry is a form of literature that uses aesthetic and often rhythmic qualities of language, such as phonoaesthetics, sound symbolism, and meter, to evoke to meaningless, to evoke meanings in addition to or in place of a prosaic, ostensible meaning. A poem is a literary composition written by a poet utilizing this principle. An epitaph is a short text honoring a deceased person. Strictly speaking, it refers to text that is inscribed on a tombstone or plaque, but it may also be used in a figurative sense. Some epitaphs are specified by the person themselves before their death, while others are chosen. A headstone, tombstone, or gravestone is a stele or marker, usually stone, that is placed over a grave. It is traditional for burials in the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim religions, among others. In most cases, it has the deceased's name, date of birth, and date of death inscribed on it. A commemorative plaque, or simply plaque, or in other places referred to as historical marker or historical plaque, is a plate of metal, ceramic, stone, wood, or other material, typically attached to a wall, stone, or other vertical surface, and bearing text or an image in relief or both to commemorate one or many. An epithet is a byname or a descriptive term accompanying or occurring in place of a name and having entered common usage. It has various shapes of meaning when applied to seemingly real or fictitious people, divinities, objects, and binomial nomenclature. It can also be a descriptive title. An idiom is a phrase or expression that typically presents a figurative non literal meaning attached to the phrase. But some phrases become figurative idioms while retaining the literal meaning of the phrase. Categorized as formulaic language, an idiom's figurative meaning is different from the literal meaning. Literal and figurative language is a distinction within some fields of language analysis, in particular stylistics, rhetoric, and semantics. Literal language uses words exactly according to their conventionally accepted meanings or denotation. To kick the bucket is an English idiom considered a euphemistic, informal, or slang term meaning to die. Its origin remains unclear, though there have been several theories. Chenkyu are a type of traditional Chinese idiomatic expression, most of which consist of four characters. Chenkyu were widely used in classical Chinese and are still common in vernacular Chinese writing and in the spoken language today. In Korean, Saje Seong Eo are four character idioms, the analog of Chinese Chenkyu and Japanese Yojichu Kugo are generally but not always of Chinese origin. They have analogous categorization to the analogs in other languages, such as Gosa Seong Eo for historical idioms. Yojichukugo is a Japanese lexeme consisting of four kanji. English translations of Yojichukugo include four character compound, four character idiom, four character idiomatic phrase, and four character idiomatic compound. It is equivalent to Chinese Chenkyu. A mantra or mantram is a sacred utterance, a mnemonous sound, a syllable, word, or phonemes, or group of words in Sanskrit, Pali, and other languages believed by practitioners to have religious, magical, or spiritual powers. Some mantras have a syntactic structure and literal meaning. A maxim is a concise expression of a fundamental moral rule or principle, whether considered as objective or subjective, con- contingent on one's philosophy. A maxim is often pedagogical and motivates specific actions. The Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy define maxim as whatever they define it as. Morality is the differentiation of intentions, decisions, and actions between those that are distinguished as proper, which is right, and those that are improper, which is wrong. Morality can be a body of standards or principles derived from a code of conduct from a particular philosophy, religion, or just a story. A synonym is a word, morpheme, or phrase that means exactly or nearly the same as another word. Morpheme or phrase is a given language in a given language. For example, in English language, the words begin, start, commence, and initiate are all synonyms of one another. A brocard is a legal maxim in Latin that is, in a strict sense, derived from traditional legal authorities, even from ancient Rome. The word is a variant of the Latinized name of Burchard of Worms, Bishop of Worms, Germany, who compiles 20 volumes of ecclesiastical rules. A nome is a type of saying, especially an aphorism or a maxim designed to provide instruction in a compact form. A legal maxim is an established principle or proposition of law, and a species of aphorism and general maxim. The word is apparently a variant of the Latin maxima, but this latter word is not found in extant text of Roman law with any denotation exactly analogous to that of a legal maxim in the medieval or modern period. A motto is the general motivation or intention of an individual, family, social group, or organization. Mottos are usually found predominantly in written form and may stem from long traditions of social foundations or from significant events, such as a civil war or a revolution. A motto may be in any language. A slogan is a memorable motto or phrase used in a clan, political, commercial, religious, and other context as a repetitive expression of an idea or purpose, with the goal of persuading members of the public or a more defined target group. Damn it, no page for quip. I was actually looking forward to go through quip and witticism. Wit is a form of intelligent humor, the ability to say or write things that are clever and usually funny. Someone witty is a person who is skilled at making clever and funny remarks. Forms of wit include the quip, repartee, and wisecrack. Hmm. Pretty interesting. So, aphorism is a truth, like a general truth or principle. Do you want to go through like multiple uh, wiki pages here? Definitely, I want to check out maybe idiom or maybe four character idiom. Maybe one of these if there isn't any page. Definitely check out witticism and also check out epigram. I wanted to check out this too, but there is no wiki page. Uh, okay, let's start with witticism. Wit is a form of intelligent humor, the ability to say or write things that are clever and usually funny. Someone witty is a person who is skilled at making clever and funny remarks. Forms of wit include the quip, repartee, and wisecrack. Forms. As in the wit of Dorothy Parker's set, the Algonquin Round Table, witty remarks may be intentionally cruel, as in many epigrams, and perhaps more ingenious than funny. A quip is an observation or saying that has some wit but perhaps descends into sarcasm, or otherwise is short of a point. And a witticism also suggests the diminutive. Repartee is the wit of the quick answer and capping comment, the snappy comeback and neat retort. For instance, Wilds said, I wish I'd said that. Whistler, you will. Oscar, you will. Wait. And in poetry, wit in poetry is characteristic of metaphysical poetry as a style and was prevalent in the time of English playwright Shakespeare, who admonished pretension with the phrase, better a witty fool than a foolish wit. It may combine wordplay with conceptual thinking as a kind of verbal display requiring attention without intending to be laugh aloud funny. In fact, wit can be a thin disguise for more poignant feelings that are being versified. English poet John Donne is the representative of this style of poetry. Further meanings. More generally, one's wits are one's intellectual powers of all types. Native wit, meaning the wits with which one is born, is close synonymous with common sense. To live by one's wits is to be an opportunist, but not always of the scrupulous kind. To have one's wits about one is to be alert and capable of quick reasoning. To be at the end of one's wits, which is I'm at my wits' end, is to be immensely frustrated. Humor is the tendency of experiences to provoke laughter and provide amusement. The term derives from the humoral medicine of the ancient Greeks, which taught that the balance of fluids in the human body, known as humors, controlled human health and emotion. Dorothy Parker was an American poet, writer, critic, and satirist based in New York. She was best known for her wit, wisecracks, and eye for 20th century urban foibles. The Algonquin Round Table was a group of New York City writers, critics, actors, and wits gathering initially as part of a practical joke. Members of the Vicious Cycle, as they dubbed themselves, met for lunch each day at the Algonquin Hotel from 1919 until roughly 1929. Wow. 10 years. A genius is a person who displays exceptional intellectual ability, creative productivity, universality in genre, or originality, typically to a degree that is associated with the achievement of new discoveries or advances in a domain of knowledge. Sarcasm is the caustic use of words, often in a humorous way, to mock someone or something. Sarcasm may imply ambivalence, although it is not necessarily ironic. Most noticeable in spoken words, sarcasm is mainly distinguished by the inflection with which it is spoken or with. Okay, now it makes sense. You will Oscar, so because it's Oscar Wilde. So Oscar Wilde said, "I wish I'd said that," and James Whistler responded back, "You will, Oscar, you will." Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde was an Irish poet and playwright. After writing in different forms throughout the 1880s, he became one of the most popular playwrights in London in the early 1890s. He is best remembered for his epigrams and plays. James Abbott McNeill Whistler was an American painter active during the American Gilded Age and based primarily in the United Kingdom. He eschewed sentimentality and moral illusion in painting and was a leading proponent of the credo, art for art's sake. Art for art's sake. That's a pretty interesting thought. The term metaphysical poets was coined by the critic Samuel Johnson to describe a loose group of 17th century English poets whose work was characterized by the inventive use of conceits and by a greater emphasis on the spoken rather than lyrical quality of their verses. William Shakespeare was an English playwright, poet, and actor. He is widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language and the world's greatest dramatist. He is often called England's national poet and the Bard of Avon. His extant works, including collaborations, wordplay is a literary technique and a form of wit in which words used become the main subject of the work, primarily for the purpose of intended effect or amusement. Examples of wordplay include puns, phonetic mix ups such as spoonerism, obscure words. John Donne was an English poet, scholar, soldier, and secretary born into a recusant family, who later became a cleric in the Church of England. Under royal patronage, he was made Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. from 1621 to 1631. He's considered the preeminent. Common sense is sound, practical judgment concerning everyday matters, or a basic ability to perceive, understand, and judge in a manner that is shared by nearly all people. Opportunism is the practice of taking advantage of circumstances with little regard for principles or with what the consequences are for others. Opportunist actions are expedient actions guided primarily by self interested motives. The term can be applied to individual human. Reason is the capacity of consciously applying logic by drawing conclusions from new or existing information with the aim of seeking the truth. It is closely associated with such characteristically human activities as philosophy, science, language, mathematics, and art. In psychology, frustration is a common emotional response to opposition related to anger, annoyance, and disappointment. Frustration arises from the perceived resistance to the fulfillment of an individual's will or goal and is likely to increase when a will or goal is denied or blocked. What in the world is this? Comedy portal? Okay, I'm gonna figure about that later. There's so many different wiki pages I want to explore, but I got to stick with only few. What was the other page I was thinking in here? Idiom, yeah. Okay, so we gotta pick one of these. And I would say I'll pick this one because it seems like a lot of the other pages are sort of acknowledging that it was originally, I mean, Chinese origin. And generally, but not always of Chinese origin. To be, to be, to correct myself. So let's check out Chengyu, which means already made or formed words or speech, are a type of traditional Chinese idiomatic expression, most of which consist of four characters. Chengyu were widely used in classical Chinese and are still common in vernacular Chinese, writing and in spoken language today. According to the most stringent definition, there are about 5,000 Chengyu in the Chinese language, though some dictionaries list over 20,000. Chengyu are considered the collected wisdom of the Chinese culture and contain the experiences, moral concepts, and admonishments from previous generations of Chinese. Nowadays, Chengyu still play an important role in Chinese conversations and education. Chinese idioms are one of four types of formulaic expressions, which also include collocations, two part allegorical sayings, and proverbs. They are often referred to as Chinese idioms or four character idioms, however, they are not the only idioms in Chinese. So, Chinese idioms are one of four types of formulaic expressions. So, one is Shuyu. So, formulaic expressions known as Shuyu. That's one idiom. And then collocations. That's the second idiom. In Chinese, it's I'm saying Chinese. I would assume in Mandarin it's Guan Yong Gyun. Guan Yong Gyun. And then there is two part allegorical sayings, which is pronounced in Mandarin. It's pronounced as Shen Yun. And then proverbs, which is Yan Yu. They're often referred to as Chinese idioms. Okay, all right. So let's see the origin. Chengyu are mostly derived from ancient literature, including the pre-Qin classics, poetry from all periods of Chinese history, and late imperial vernacular novels and short stories. A small number were constructed in the 19th and early 20th centuries from Western source materials. Among the early classical literature, the lyrical imagery from the Sheng and the detailed and vivid stories recorded in the Zhongzhang and the Shiji serves as particularly rich source materials for Shengyu. Since the Shengyi poems consist of four character lines, some Shengyu are direct quotes from the Shengyi. For example, Wan Shou Wu Jiang, which means 10,000 year lifespan without bound. A traditional expression to wish someone a long life. Wan Shou Wu Jiang, 10,000 year lifespan without bound. Wan Shou Wu Jiang. Okay, and this often appearing on bowls and other tableware, of course. Quotes the poem Tian Bon in the lesser code hums section of the Shenjing. More commonly, however, Shanggu are created by succinctly paraphrasing or summarizing the original text, usually by selecting the most salient characters from the passage in question and inserting any necessary classical grammatical particles. As such, Shangyu are fossilized expressions that use the vocabulary and follow the syntactic rules of literary Chinese. Consequently, they convey information more compactly than normal vernacular speech or writing. They may contain subject and predicate and act as an independent clause, or even twin two character independent clause in parallel, or they may play the role of any part of speech in a sentence, acting syntactically as an adjective, adverb, verb, or noun phrase. In both speech and writing, they serve these second, secondly convey a complex or multifaceted situation, scene, or concept, and used fittingly and elegantly. They also mark a speaker or writer's erudition. Sure, this is a long page, but I like examples. The following three examples show that the meaning of the idiom can be totally different by only changing one character. Wow. One day, a thousand autumns. Meaning implies rapid changes. One day equals a thousand years. So there are four different characters here, which is I would pronounce yi, ri, guang, gu. So if someone say yiri guang gu, it means one day a thousand autumns. And if someone pronounce yiri guan li, oh, they're changing one character. Okay, so the same. It means one day a thousand miles, which implies rapid progress, traveling a thousand miles in a day. And then Yiri Sangkun, which means one day three autumns, which means greatly missing someone. One day feels as long as 3 years. And more examples. Kill two eagles or vultures with one arrow. This is such a common idiom in most of the cultures. Kill two birds with one stone. Then break the cauldrons and sink the boats, which means burn bridges, that is, commit oneself irrevocably. Then there is call a deer a horse, which means deliberately misinterpret. Then there is so happy as to forget shoe, which means indulge in pleasures. And another is to say 3 in the morning and 4 in the evening, which means always changing, new meaning, a change without any substantive difference. It's always changing, with coming up with new things. A frog in the bottom of the well, which means a person with limited outlook. Then there is grind an iron bar down to a fine needle, which is to preserve in a difficult task, to persevere in a difficult task. Grind an iron bar down to a fine needle. Wow. Guard a tree stump to wait for rabbits, which means wait idly for reward. To mend the pen after sheep are lost, mean close the stable door after the horse has bolted, or try too late to prevent harm. 3 men make a tiger, which means repeated rumor becomes a fact. Huh. That's good line of wisdom. Return the jade to Zhao, which means to return something intact to its rightful owner. Okay. Old man from the frontier lost his horse, which means a blessing in disguise. Carve the boat in search of the sword, which means approach without considering the reality of a situation. Take chestnuts out of fire, which means someone acting in another's interest. And then carrying a bramble and ask for punishment, which means offer a humble apologies. And military tactics on paper, it's in theoretical discussion on useless in practice. To add feet when drawing a snake, which means to improve something unnecessarily. To add feet when drawing a snake. Oh, that's funny. To add eyes when painting a dragon, which means doing something so well that it becomes powerful. Playing the kukwin to a cow, which means to communicate well, you need to understand your audience. Then swallow like tiger and devour like wolf, which means eating food quickly and in a messy manner. Kind of interesting. I want to check out wordplay. Wordplay or wordplay, also play on words, is a literary meaning and a form of wit in which words use become the main subject of the work, primarily for the purpose of intended effect or amusement. Examples of wordplay include puns, phonetic mix ups, such as spoonerisms, obscure words and meanings, clever rhetorical excursions, oddly formed sentences, double entendre, and telling character names, such as in the play The Importance of Being Earnest, earnest being a given name that sounds exactly like the adjective earnest. Wordplay is quite common in oral cultures as a method of reinforcing meaning. Examples of text based, which is orthographic, wordplay are found in language with or without alphabet based scripts, such as homophonic puns in Mandarin Chinese. Some techniques often used in wordplay include interpreting idioms literary, and create contradictions and redundancies, as in Tom Swifties. Hurry up and get to the back of the ship, Tom said sternly. Linguistic fossils and set phrases are often manipulated for wordplay, as is Valorisms. For example, we'll have to rehearse that. said the undertaker as the coffin fell out of the car. Another use of fossils is in using an- antonyms antonyms of unpaired words, like I was well coiffed and shelved, back formation from disheveled. Okay, let's go through some examples. Most writers engage in wordplay to some extent, but certain writers are particularly committed to or adept at wordplay as a major feature of their work. Shakespeare's quibbles have made him a noted punster. Similarly, P.G. Wodehouse was hailed by the Times as a comic genius recognized in his lifetime as a classic and an old master of farce for his own acclaimed wordplay. James Joyce, author of Ulysses, is another noted word player. For example, in his Finnegan's Wake, Joyce's phrase, they were young and easily fruitinet, clearly implies the more conventional, they were young and easily frightened. Okay. However, the former also makes an apt pun on the names of two famous psycho psychoanalysts, Jung and Freud. I said it, Freud. Freud. They were Jung and easily Freudian Ned. I see. An epitaph, probably unassigned to any grave, demonstrates use in rhyme. Here lie the bones of one Bun. He was killed with a gun. His name was not Bun, but Wood. But Wood would not rhyme with gun, but Bun would. That's good. Crossword puzzles often employ wordplay to challenge solvers. Cryptic crosswords, especially, are based on elaborate, elaborate systems of wordplay. An example of modern wordplay can be found on line 103 of Childish Gambino's number 3. Life, the biggest troll. H2O plus my D. That's my hood. I'm living in it. Rapper Milo uses a play on words in his verse on True Nen, which is keep any heat by the fine china dinner set. Your man's caught the chill and it ain't even winter yet. A farmer says, I got soaked for nothing. Stood out there in the rain bang in the middle of my land. A complete waste of time. I like to kill the swine who said you can win the Nobel Prize for being outstanding in your field. Eminem is known for the extensive wordplay in the lyrics of his music. The Mario Party series is known for its mini-game titles that usually are puns and various plays on words. For example, Shock Drop and Roll, Gimme a Break, and Right or Left. These mini-game titles are also different depending on regional differences and take into account that specific region's culture. Related phenomena. Wordplay can enter common usage as neologism. Wordplay is closely related to word games, that is, games in which the point is manipulating words. See also language game for a linguistics variation. Wordplay can cause problems for translators. Example, in the book Winnie the Pooh, a character mistakes the word issue for the noise of a sneeze, a resemblance which disappears when the word issue is translated into another language. A narrative technique is any of the several specific methods the creator of a narrative uses to convey what they want. In other words, a strategy used in the making of a narrative to relay information to the audience and particularly to develop the narrative, usually in order to make it more complete. Amusement is the state of experiencing humorous and entertaining events or situations while the person or animal actively maintains the experience and is associated with enjoyment, happiness, laughter, and pleasure. It is an emotion with positive valence and high psychological value. A spoonerism is an error in speech in which corresponding consonants, vowels, or morphemes are switched between two words in a phrase. These are named after the Oxford Don and ordained minister William Archibald Spooner, who reputedly did this. Rhetoric is the art of persuasion, which, along with grammar and logic, is one of the three ancient arts of disclosure. Rhetoric aims to study the techniques writers or speakers utilize to inform, persuade, or motivate particular audience in specific situations. A double entendre A double entendre is a figure of speech or a particular way of wording that is devised to have a double meaning, of which one is typically obvious, whereas the other often conveys a message that would be too socially awkward, sexually suggestive, or offensive to state directly. The Importance of Being Earnest, a trivial comedy for serious people, is a play by Oscar Wilde, first performed on 14 February 1895 at the St. James Theatre in London. It is a farcical comedy in which the protagonist maintains fictitious personage to escape burdens something. Oral tradition or oral lore is a form of human communication wherein knowledge, art, ideas, and cultural material is received, preserved, and traditionally and transmitted orally from one generation to another. The transmission is through speech or song and may include folk tales, ballads, chants, and orthography is a set of conventions for writing a language, including norm of spelling, hyphenation, capitalization, word breaks, emphasis, and punctuation. Standard Chinese, like many Sinitic varieties, has a significant number of homophonous syllables and words due to its limited phonetic inventory. The Sci dictionary lists 149 characters representing the syllable yi. Many Chinese takes great delight in using the large amount of homophones in the language. A Tom Swifty is a phrase in which a quoted sentence is linked by a pun to the manner in which it is attributed. Tom Swifties may be considered a type of valorism. The standard syntax is for the quoted sentence to be first, followed by the description of the act of speaking. The stern is the back or aftmost part of a ship or boat, technically defined as the area built up over the stern post, extending upwards from the counter rail to the taffrail. The stern lies opposite the bow, the foremost part of a ship. Originally, the term only referred to the aft port section of the ship. In linguistic morphology, fossilization refers to two close notions. One is preserving of ancient linguistic features which have lost their grammatical functions in language. Another is loss of productivity of a grammatical paradigm, which still remains in use in some words. A phraseme, a phraseme also called a set phrase, idiomatic phrase, multi word expression, or idiom, is a multi word or multi morphemic utterance where at least one of whose components is selectionally constrained or restricted by linguistic conventions such that it is not freely chosen. Valorisms, named after sayings of Sam Weller. So, Wellerisms. Wellerisms, named after sayings of Sam Weller, is Charles Dickens' novel, The Pickwick Papers. Make fun of established cliches and proverbs by showing that they are wrong in certain situations, often when taken literally. In this sense, Wellerisms that include proverbs. That's an interesting article. I would like to check that out later. An unpaired word is one that, according to the usual rules of the language, would appear to have a related word but does not. Such words usually have a prefix or suffix that would imply that there is an antonym, with the prefix or suffix being absent or opposite. Well, I kind of enjoyed today's trip, journey, or whatever this is. Just floating through the randomness of wikis. And I feel that I kind of like, learned and dived deeper into like so many different concepts, which I probably wouldn't have explored by myself. Um, so it's kind of helpful. and and it's I find this kind of useful to also distract myself from a lot of the crazy things going on in the world right now. And to a certain degree, I feel that this craziness is here just to remain. It always gonna be here. There, there always gonna be different kind of craziness. I mean, right now we could actually have World War III, um, as crazy as it may sound. I mean, I hope there is no war, and let alone a world war. But the way things are, the way things always going to be, these are part of reality. There are always going to be conflicts between people, between countries, hell, even between species all the time. Uh, and these conflicts are pretty much like natural, right? I mean, that's why we see conflicts all the time in the nature, because this is very natural. And unless we try to resolve the inner conflict, because right now the whole Russia Ukraine war is um, being fought over one man's ego. That's what it is. And um, there is no, I mean, there is no reason for Putin to do what he's doing. I mean, other than obviously expanding the territory, and then what? I mean, this is what I kind of don't like about most of the countries. Even U.S. for in a lot of ways, because uh, if you don't need to kind of say spread democracy or spread communism, because if it's a good system, you just make your country so good that people will automatically look at your country and will be like, oh, okay, yeah, we want to copy that model, we want to adopt that model. You don't have to go and share it to the world. And sure, it will take a while for different people and different societies and different traditions and different cultures. And but instead of trying to persuade them, I mean, I feel that there are enough problems in here in this country, and likewise in every country. Internal issues within every country. There are so many internal issues within every country that if if uh, if a country just try to resolve that, it will automatically be uh, in the limelight of the world, I guess. But again, human nature. Pretty much every country, regardless of who the ruler is, or which party um, is the ruling party, there always going to be corruption. Human nature. So yeah, I'm trying to reflect on my personal nature, and over the past few weeks, I've been observing that I've I've been losing losing my path, so to speak. And to a certain degree, it's, well, to I would say 80 to 90% it's my fault. Um, but there are other factors as well. But that being said, I feel like this is the time to recalibrate. Like, everyone in the world actually need to recalibrate, to kind of like take a breath and and figure out what the next step you want to take. And there are gonna be situations which will be out of your control. It happens even when things were normal, which were never. Things were always chaotic. It's just different chaos. I mean, but over the years, that chaos becomes sort of like you know, like a nostalgic version. So people kind of crave for that older days when things were simple, not as messy as it is today, but things were always messy. The only difference was uh, people used to kind of like not share it with the entire world. That was the only difference. And now there is like amplified. So every chaos is amplified because everyone can connect with the world, and which, uh, I think is a good thing because a lot of people, we are going through a shift in the technology itself. This everything is so new. It's not even like 20 years old or 30 years old, definitely less than 30 years old, so um, everything happening in the world is um, impacted, like, or uh, everything happening in the world right now is a sort of just a reflection of the chaos with which still would have happened, but no one. Technology is just a tool which kind of like let everyone share their their views, their point of views, and obviously that sort of amplifies the chaos because every single individual is chaotic. Who isn't? Uh, you can train yourself to act in a particular way, at a particular time. But I'm sure every brain has like so much chaos in it, and especially because we all have this inner dialogue, which um, which is which is how to describe it. It's it's sort of it's part of you and also not you. Um, so it's yeah, the inner voice is your label, right? Um, you're gonna use the factors of your situation, I guess, and create different labels for that situation. And those labels can vary based on what you do, or based on your emotional state, and based on um, everything going on in the environment, maybe. But the bigger point is that at the end of the day, the story we are telling ourselves are just that. Just it's just a story we are telling ourselves. The inner voice is telling a particular story, and either you kind of like take control of the narrative, or let it tell you the story it gonna come up with. And that inner voice doesn't have any particular direction. It's impacted by your environment, impacted by your current mindset, it's impacted by so many various factors. So that inner voice itself is being impacted by everything going outside, uh, and that impact is creating different stories, for in which we end up believing as truth. And to certain degree, I mean, these stories are helpful, to form to kind of look at the reality and understand what's going on. These stories kind of help, but these stories have their own biases. These, like, maybe they're the core inner beliefs and values. The and I kind of like hustle through this a lot because there are a few um, automatic actions I end up taking or making, which I don't like, and it's coming from uh, coming from this deep core value. Or it's hard to kind of phrase it without going into details, and I don't want to go into details. But so the bottom line is that the the deep belief system kind of impacted uh, not just the stories we tell ourselves, but also our behaviors and actions and everything. So that's why it's important to kind of like go back and reflect on that deep core belief and core value, and try to kind of hustle through it and see why, what makes you uncomfortable and why it makes you uncomfortable, and find out how you can how you can like actually address that uncomfortness and resolve that uncomfortness, but at the same time coming from like this Buddhist philosophy, to be equanimous about that, meaning like not letting it impact you. um, so if you have, say, some sort of good core value or bad core value, right? Like, then if you kind of like, say, looked at some core value you have, maybe call it like generosity, right? So if you're super generous to everyone, maybe like you've been generous throughout your uh, you know childhood, your adulthood, and you've always been generous about, say, food. If you meet someone, you'll treat them, or you'll cook for them or whatever, right? So uh, you can be generous in a specific for a specific thing. So if that's your core value, that core value could also become a root for pain and suffering, right? Like, imagine you feel generous of feeding other people by cooking, and you are a bad chef, then then um, no one want to eat anything you cook. So even though you're generous, people don't want it. So it could hurt that inner value, the generosity, right? Uh, and could convert that generosity into bitterness, I guess. But at the same time, generosity could also come down to, if you're like super charitable, and if you give money to like a lot of people, when they thank you back, you feel kind of like pre um, kind of like pumped up, because you feel good about yourself, that that's inflating ego, and a lot of people do that. They are charitable just to kind of drive that pleasure of feeling good, that they help others, they are a good person, maybe to compensate for something else. But regardless, that generosity still could like boost an ego. So even though it's like a good value at the bottom, it still could become a source for like a more issues. And on the other end, like if you have like the some sort of like bad value, maybe, I don't know, if it's stealing, right? If you're like I'm maybe like blanking on the exact term, but if you can't help yourself and end up kind of like shoplifting all the time, first of all, that's, I get it, it's sort of like a tick or trigger. It could be like addiction to a certain degree, but and even though it's like controllable, and it's not dependent on like a substance, right? Like, if people who abuse like alcohol or cigarette or any other drugs, they're addicted to that drug. So shoplifting is more psychological, I would assume, and more also like behavior, and probably also come from this deep core whatever, right? Like could be insecurity of some sort. And those insecurities and those deep bad values definitely hurt, and could create a pattern of behaviors which could make you say feel shameful or embarrassed or anything. But at the end, the deep lying underlying core value, whatever that bad core value is, um, until we fix that, it gonna keep on creating these, say, embarrassing moments or shameful moments, um, or angry moments or frustrating moments, or whatever it could be, right? Like frustration could be good too. Uh, but that's also kind of like a difficult, in my experience, it's a difficult job too. Like, trying to kind of change the value system, which means like you have to go back and change the way you kind of like look at the world. And I'm still not there yet. Uh, or maybe like I shouldn't say that, because, uh, but it's not easy to kind of change the entire perspective of how you look at the reality and the world. It's easier to do that when you have time to look at different things, to kind of think about things, and maybe like weigh the effects of the different things, and figure out which one is a better thing. I said a lot of things there, uh, but in the moment, it's very painful, and that's where muscle memory, I guess, kicks in, or your comfort level kicks in. And I I've seen a lot of people falling back to their baseline, including myself. If I'm in a social situation where I don't know what I want to do or what's going on, then end up falling back to the baseline. And my goal is to have a better baseline, right? To have a better baseline which could handle any situation, which could uh, which could understand the situation in a better way, instead of like falling to the baseline, which could be like in the from the negative side, it could be like completely shutting down, completely like isolating, or you know completely like just leaving the place itself, or whatever. So there are different baselines, and that I I that it's this is kind of like a reminder that I have to like go back to those core baselines, and kind of like work it through, because um, I feel that um, I feel like I could do better job, you know. And one thing I'm really really happy about is some of the things I've been doing consistently, and the effects of those in my personal life. You know, like for example, one of the things I do is to go like play different brain games like every single day, and I kind of love that, because they each of these games or apps have like different games, and each of these games have like different concepts behind them. Like some is to train how fast you can think, some is to train your rational thinking or logical thinking, um, and so on. So it's interesting to kind of do that every single day, make me feel that okay, I'm getting maybe like 0.00000000001% better every day. So, maybe over time it will be better. But still, like just doing it every single day make me feel okay that I maybe exercised my brain for 15 minutes. It's not a big deal, but okay, 15 minutes of playing brain games. So that's good. One thing I'm missing out is on like working out my body, like the actual physical exercise. And uh, I know that it is very very difficult to kind of like um, get started and be consistent at that. And I kind of missed the time when I was consistent, which was back in 2020, I believe, like few months where I was like very consistent on a lot of these things, and I saw the effect. They were like multifold effect, and that's why I was getting at. Like I gotta recalibrate, and I bet like every one of you have like some of those moments or some of those periods in your life when you felt, oh, this is ideal version of me. Maybe for whatever reason you were doing things, or you were eating things, or you were um, you know um, um, acting in a certain way, and all of that kind of like worked, and you felt that life was awesome. And now that's why people try to go back to that nostalgic time, like especially when they were younger and were able to do more. And to a certain degree, that's the entire goal, right? Like to do as much as possible when you're young, so that two things, like when you grow old, you grow old well. Not just grow old because of the time, but also because of all the lessons you learned through your journey, and what lessons you learned, and how you kind of like work through yourself, how you um how you kind of like you know modified your inner stories to kind of make you a better person, whatever that better mean for to you. um, but yeah, these that's I think is how I want to age, like create more memories. And I know that I need to do a better job, because I'm kind of sort of addicted to a few things, including watching ton of like movies and TV shows, which I shouldn't. And I know that, because a lot of those shows are exciting. They're kind of like top rated shows for a reason. Um, but at the same time, they eat away so much of my time. And 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 my goal is to, when I look back at this time from future, I I gonna be like, oh, okay, that was the time when I was doing this. And oh yeah, doing that actually made difference, because what I'm doing, what I was doing right now will kind of like add up sometime in the future. When, where, how, I don't know, but it will. So everything is sort of like an experience, right? So just being consistent, and maybe like just playing brain games 15 minutes a day, maybe few years from now will impact drastically, and make me um, quicker, make me more, you know, uh, whatever my goal is, or wherever it kind of helps me, quicker in responding, quicker in making decisions, quicker in figuring out like what projects I want to work on, what projects I don't want to work on, and quicker in actually approaching my life and everything. So whatever way these games will help me in the future, um, I'm I'm kind of just looking forward to it, and I hope that every one of you have something similar going on in your life too, and even if it's not, just pick up one thing which you do every day anyways, like maybe maybe if you say write one line a day, that should be sufficient, just one line a day. It could be as simple as today was a good day, today was a bad day, today was a not a good day, today was amazing, or whatever. So maybe just lining one line a day of what kind of day it was, uh, would be would be nice. Would be it kind of like over the years you're gonna have the collection of different days, and you can like read through it. Like, okay, you were 5 days you were going through some trouble, and then sixth day things worked out, and then you realize, oh shoot, I was just being worried for no reason. And then sometimes you would see, oh, you actually were struggling, and you kind of learned something, and that's why you kind of like got the result, the good result you wanted. So that's kind of like also give you a better data, like, hey, learn something, and and get better. And I'm gonna try to get better at this, which gonna take a moment, but I know I'm gonna be there sooner than later. Maybe in a few years. I don't want to put a number on that, but I feel that if I keep on doing this like every single day, in few years I'm gonna get better at it, at this, at even at pronouncing different words, um, and maybe even trying to use different accents and whatnot. But let's see. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So, but we have long time ahead of us, hopefully, until World War III breaks off. Uh, but regardless of World War III or not, stay peaceful.